The Great Barrier Reef is definitely the most beautiful and largest living structure in the world, as it is incredibly rich and diverse. This magnificent reef spans out to 2,300 kilometres long between the Queensland coast and the western edge of the Pacific Ocean. Among its large, notorious variety of colourful reefs, this famous natural icon is home to many organisms that include approximately 600 types of soft and hard corals, over 100 species of jellyfish, 3,000 species of mollusks, 500 species of worms, 1,625 species of fish, 133 species of sharks and stingrays, and also more than 30 species of dolphins and whales. These species together create one of the largest communities that are intimately and intricately all connected.
But did you know that mostly the inshore areas of the Great Barrier Reef are being damaged by the risen amount of sediments, nutrients, and pesticides in the catchment runoffs? For over the past 150 years, sediment inflow on the Great Barrier Reef has risen up to 4 to 5 times. It collects sediment runoff from 38 major catchments from approximately 424,000 kilometres squared off the coastal Queensland. Agricultural lands, such as cattle grazing or sugarcane crops, are in the coastal areas of Queensland are a major reason towards sediment in the Great Barrier Reef. Microscopic algae, also known as phytoplankton, are brought on by the nutrients found in the fertilisers and soils that are washed away from these properties. Sediment creates large clouds in the waters that block off the sunlight from reaching the phytoplankton algae, which the abundance of coral depends on this to survive. Flood season is another big contributor to sediment washing into the Great Barrier Reef. The offload from the fresh water create low salinity, floatable flood plumes, which in most cases travel northwards along the coastline of the Great Barrier Reef. The distance between the reefs and the source of sediment runoff and the floodwaters largely determine the spatial patterns of inshore and coastal reefs on the Great Barrier Reef. Did you know that as many as 100 different types of coral occupy a single acre of ocean? Since the year of 1985, coral cover has rapidly declined by half of what it originally was along the Great Barrier Reef.
In 2010, along with the tropical cyclone Tasha, the highest recorded Queensland rainfall caused chaotic flooding to the Fitzroy River in Queensland. This was the cause of a major flood plume which engulfed the coral reefs lying 12 kilometres offshore of the central Queensland coast near Yeppoon, which caused 40 to 100% mortality to coral infringement of many of the islands of Keppel Bay. Another species, being the leatherback turtle, is the longest living marine kind to ever have travelled the world's oceans. It is a survivor of the disastrous asteroid attack and has also outlived the dinosaurs. Despite these turn of events, these turtles are on the verge of extinction, and the question to scientists is whether or not they will survive into the next decade. These spectacular creatures are now under threat due to their feeding grounds being the coral reefs that are being destroyed by the sedimentation on land and the nutrient runoff caused by the agricultural farms.
The issue of sediment runoff into the Great Barrier Reef is an ongoing issue threatening the health of the magnificent natural beauty. A study analysed the barium to calcium ratios in historic porites coral from the Havana Reef, a location found in the central Great Barrier Reef that is frequently influenced by flood plumes from the Burdekin River, to create a record of this sediment variations from around 1750 to 1998 data was collected. The one thing occurring between those dates was the European settlement. It was found that early on the suspended sediment from river floods reached only the inner reef on occasion. However, since about 1870, a 5 to 10-fold increase in the sediments is recorded, with the highest fluxes happening during the drought-breaking floods. The sediment increase has occurred from land use practices such as clearing, overstocking, and agriculture that has led to the degradation of the semi-arid river catchments.
Recently, however, there has been a great debate between scientists on whether or not the Great Barrier Reef is at great risk from constant rise in nutrients, or if the rise is damaged from weather events such as Cyclone Hamish and Yahtzee that combined damaged the reef in a way that was only expected once every 600 years. Meanwhile, some are saying things are much worse than they seem. A scientist among them, marine paleoecologist John Podolfi, has been analysing sediment cores and other methods to reconstruct the reef's history. Landolfi's team has reported declines in acropora corals, which are a major part of the reef's framework. They date back to the 1920s. These losses are due to the introduction of agriculture brought in by the European settlement, which, as stated before, has led to the current affected water quality and damage to the reefs. From European settlement in Australia to the 21st century, you would think we could find more sustainable ways of agriculture and conserving our Great Barrier Reef.
With the issue having such a strong history, it seems all too surreal that the Great Barrier Reef is still being exposed to an increasing level of sediments, nutrients, and pesticides.
Recent surveying of sediment suggests that the capacity entering the reef has increased to 7,930 kilotons per year from the pre-European settlement capacity of 2,931 kilotons. This immense increase is mainly due to soil erosion, created from poor land management practices and the highly variable rain patterns in varying areas. Hardened surfaces and straightened channels as a result of urban and industrial development, along with agricultural processes, causes the runoff to have more erosive power, which increases stream bank erosion. The event of a flood has the potential to carry pulses of nutrients, sediments, pesticides, and several other pollutants from catchments, which all have significant impacts on inshore Great Barrier Reef ecosystems and the species occupying them. High concentration levels of pesticides in waterways are most common in areas of heavy agricultural activity, including processes such as sugarcane and cotton. Herbicide residues are most commonly found in surface waters of the Great Barrier Reef. An increase of herbicide concentration during flood plumes causes extension into the marine environment, resulting in negative effects on species of corals, seagrass, and microalgae, which then present strong risks to marine life that consume that first line of the food chain. Causes for nutrient invasion into the reef include urban runoffs, river discharges, and resuspension of nearshore sediments. Invading nutrients from the result of land-based runoff are considered to be one of the greatest threats to the reef ecosystem and the species living within it. Once the inorganic nutrients have dissolved, they then enter the marine system as they are absorbed by seafloor plants such as macroalgae, seagrass, and phytoplankton, being lethal as it is the first link within the food chain.
With these implications having negative effects on the Great Barrier Reef's ecosystem, it leads to serious economic complications for reef-dependent industries, such as tourism and fishing for communities living within the region. Any problems associated with depreciating water quality has the potential to compromise business fully dependent on the reef. Perceptions of the health of the reef can affect its attractiveness for tourism and local recreation, these including research and educational activities, fishing, and commercial marine tourism.
As increased levels of sedimentation, nutrients, and pesticides in the reef's ecosystem affect coastal zones and inshore areas, it causes higher algae growth, smothered corals, and build-up of pollutants in sediments and marine species. With phytoplankton, bacteria, and benthic organisms removing dissolved inorganic nutrients from high seawater levels, over a long period of time it can result in ecological changes across larger areas and metabolic changes in many marine plants and animals. Changes in water quality can affect the biodiversity and resilience of reef systems. Higher concentrations of pollutants, such as suspended sediments, nitrogen, and phosphorus, indicated by high levels of chlorophyll and lower water clarity, lead to more algae and less coral diversity. In these conditions, algae take over and reduce the chances for new, hard corals to establish and grow.
With the human impacts on the Great Barrier Reef, the future which holds, if nothing is changed, is the damage of it by 2050. Without the damage, there is loss of native vegetation and wetlands in consequence of the pollution. On the Great Barrier Reef, there is a lot of fish and marine life, which can support more than half of existing world species, but in consequence of overfishing, this marine life is starting to disappear. Two examples of marine life which can be extinct are clownfish that can be extinct by 2057 and shrimpfish that can be extinct by 2047. Another cause of damaging is the oil spills caused by loaded ships, which make that part of the reef inhabited by marine life. Knowing that, Australia's government made a plan named the Reef 2050 Long-Term Sustainability Plan, which is a 35 years plan to secure the health and resilience of the Great Barrier Reef. This plan involves the better water quality, which expects that the inorganic loads will be reduced by 50% by 2018 and 80% by 2025. To protect the natural vegetation by 2020, a net will be improved on protected areas so that the conditions of wetlands will be preserved. A lot of species such as dolphins, dugongs, and sea turtles, which by consequence will stable or increase numbers by 2020. Another issue that will be better worked on is the coastal development that consists on every construction or anything that may affect the Great Barrier Reef. It should be approved by Australian Environment Minister and must be assessed under national environmental law. About the fisheries, there will be satellite monitoring and there will have to need the approval of wildlife trade operation to ensure that it's made an ecological fishery. Tourism also affects the reef, and solutions made were to mark a zone area which shows where can be tourist operations.